What do you
I
think?
certainly support Trump, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I mean, I've always agreed with Trump's policies, always. And I lost friends over it. But and I've never really actively supported anybody because it's not my job to actively support people. I
Right.
watch, I
Right.
like to watch. But I'm a voyeur.
Yeah.
But I became an active Trump supporter when they raided Mar-a-Lago last summer, the summer of 2022. That can't stand.
No, that can't.
And
That
I
was something.
agree with Trump on a lot. But even if I disagreed with Trump on a lot, I'd still be a Trump supporter because you cannot allow that. You cannot allow the the regime, the president of the United States, to use the Justice Department to knock the front runner out of the race. You can't do that.
No, you can't do that.
So it's bigger than Trump. It's bigger than Biden. It's a question of, do you want to live in a free country with a functioning justice system?
That's exactly
And
right.
so I'm voting for Trump. And if they convict him, I will send him the max donations and I will lead protests. That's how I feel.
That's how I feel too.
Because, and by the way, if I thought that he had committed some real crime, I wouldn't feel that way, but he didn't. He and Biden are both found with classified documents at home, along with every other former high level federal official in history. But only Trump is indicted? Like, tell me how that works. Oh, shut up.
Bear with me. I'm going to tell you why I picked that clip in a second. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris. Get your questions in. It's Q&A day. It's Friday. Couple quick little announcements we have to get out the way. First of all, of course, like the videos. If you like the videos, share them far and wide. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the notification bell, YouTube. That'll let you know when we're going to go live, but you don't have to do that on Rumble. It'll just let you know anyway. And of course, if you're on YouTube, mosey on over to Rumble. Go ahead and subscribe there as well, and vice versa. It really does all. It helps. All right. Real quick also as well, when we have long streamed to Twitter, it's not like there's no analytics for it. It's weird when you live stream to Twitter. It's like odd, but in any event, as I'm sure you all know, we're really trying to build the other platforms up anyway. So we will not be streaming. It did today, simply because both Laura and she's sick. I forgot to even take it off, but that's the last day we're going to be getting it on Twitter. I really want people to go to Rumble or Locals. YouTube's when you guys holding firm on YouTube, and until they nuke me, that's fine for now. But I'm trying to make sure we're in the spots we're in. People know where to go to watch it. And Twitter's like a distraction, and there's no impressions from it. There's no, like, I'm just losing stats that we don't even know about. It's blind. So we won't be streaming to Twitter anymore after today, unless I forget and somehow hit the button again one day. But that's it. Also, looks like I'm building more crosstabs live because, speaking of sick, last minute, Robert was trying to make it work. Robert Cahaly, he's going to we'll try to reschedule him for Monday. But like Laura, he is sick, and we don't want him falling out live. We want him resting so he can get better. So we wish him the best. Feel better. It's the season for the bugs. I mean, it is what it is. We'll get him back on. We'll get him back on soon. All right. So more time for Q&A, and I'll have to build more crosstabs. I only counted on 3, going over 3. But when you're dealing with something like this anyway, it tends to soak up a lot of showtime. And I'm going to start. I had 3 states in mind to start with first, and then go on from there. I picked that clip on Tucker because I heard it yesterday as we were actually doing some of this analysis. And some of these ethnic groups think like Tucker does. Think about where Tucker came from, and how he was brought up, the neighborhood he was brought up in, the people who surrounded him. Tucker was brought up around the ruling class. He tells a story during Roseanne's interview, which, by the way, was a wide-reaching interview, and I would strongly suggest watching it. But he tells a story about how his father purchased a home that he lived in when he grew up from a guy who was a company guy, CIA, right? And somehow this guy had gotten his hands on a house, an expensive house back then. 100 grand is a lot. That was an asset of the government's, the CIA's, and yet it ended up in his possession to sell and make money off of. And there's also a lot of stories about how defense contractors, that's one thing, they can make a lot of money. We had one, I have one in my family. The guy has I don't even know what he does with now, but he had like a 30-something, 40-something room mansion in Bel Air, Maryland, with a movie theater and everything. I mean, those guys rake in the bank on the taxpayer dollar. But some of these other stories Tucker was talking about, which I know people like this, he obviously does, you wonder on a whatever salary, how the hell you got the money for this house. And it's very clearly they're corrupt, it's very obvious. But there is a line even for the bougie folks, all right, for the ruling class that doesn't produce anything. They really live in a different kind of world to them. He does a great job explaining this. It's Ozzy and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver still. And you don't want to believe when you're immersed in it that these actors are this bad. All right. So he said, this is bigger than Trump. For me, the point was Mar-a-Lago. And as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about some of these ethnic groups that just killed Trump in 2020 and how close some of them are now. And then ones that Trump was leading with, even how much bigger his leads are now with them. And it made me think about it when I heard Tucker say that, because if you've been with me a long time, we went through this back then. And I tried to explain to you who these people are. If you are a locals member, right now we're reading, this is the old edition. This is the newer edition. We're reading the emerging Republican majority. So who these people are that we're about to go over, especially in the first state, which of course I'm going to bring up now, is the Keystone State. Okay. And don't worry, I'm going to make it bigger. But before I do, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There are, if you look at the census, all right, there is going to be people who say, I'm American. That's my ethnicity. That's who I am. That's my nationality. And then there are others who hold to the English ethnicity. All right. I'm from England. My parents, are English. My great grandparents came over. I know people who have connections to Pilgrim Rock and crap. I'm not even kidding. And you would think, well, a lot of these people, they got to be conservative. They have this long history. No, they're not. They are Yankees, waspy, and they hold to this very, I am English ethnicity. And we separate them from American because there are others who also have that identity, yet they call themselves American, and they tend to be much more Trumpy. All right. So in any event, let's take a look at them. This is the Keystone State. The entire point of this show is, what are the ethnic groups in the Rust Belt and how do they vote? How are they voting now? Every state is going to be a little bit different. That's why I love the emerging Republican majority. He did such a better job, Kevin Phillips, even back then. He did such a better job tying in ethnic groups and vote preference. And then not only that, but establishing, that's why for locals, you know what I'm talking about. The chapter on the Northeast is huge because you really can't look at the Rust Belt. And then later out west, even parts of the Sun Belt, you can't look at any of that unless you know about the Northeast and the groups that originally settled there, where they migrated to or emigrated from, right? You have to know this. And then you'll understand why Maine is the way it is, or, why Maine is so different from Vermont, or, right? It's generally in that, generally talking about those large differences, because ethnicity is different. All right. How could, if Trump is winning Protestants by such a large margin nationally, how is it that Trump is not sweeping some of these northeastern states that still have large Protestant populations? If he's winning the Catholic vote, which is a swing vote, how come he's not winning some of these areas where there are large Catholic populations? These are very complicated questions, and you will only be able to answer them when you understand these different groups, how they differ from each other depending on where they are and then where they've gone. All right. So in a state like Pennsylvania, you hear the expression a lot, the Pennsylvania Dutch. The truth is, the largest outside of American and then English, the largest vote group, ethnic, they would say ethnic voting group in the state of Pennsylvania is in fact German. I know there are quite a lot of Italians. There are a lot of Irish, right? But and by the way, check out Norwegians and Danes. Okay. Not that much. When we get to some of the other Rust Belt states, they will grow. There's some French, but generally speaking, you have people who have, their families have been there a very long time. They will identify as either American or English, and Germans are, I want to call them the swing vote now, or they were the swing vote at the beginning of the Trump realignment. Biden pulled some of them back in 2020. There were some who, said maybe I'll go back to Biden because he strikes me as a kind of working class dude. Hey, he's Catholic, he's not waspy. He's not a silk stocking Republican. He's not a Mitt Romney Mormon. He's not this, he's not that. And they gave him a chance. Not a lot of them, but some of them. And when you're talking about a state like Pennsylvania, it matters. A tiny little bit can matter. But what really killed Trump was two things: the English and the shedding of support he had among those who call themselves American. All right. The English are in the southeastern part of the state. It may not shock you, all right, that there's a lot of them there that cut through what Phillips would call the megalopolis. There are even some out west, Erie County, right? That's part, actually, if you read his book, people who will know what I'm talking about. That's still part of Yankeedom, even though I know it's crazy. But then you have all these wide swaths of territory in central and western Pennsylvania that we now know as it's non-Yankee, right? It's Appalachia. There's large 50-something counties in Pennsylvania that are really Appalachian counties. And they're very different. All right, so let's look at this. Let's go down. Well, first of all, we can look and see American and English, they vote, and they vote at very high rates. So do Germans. But typically, I know we got to be careful with sample sizes, which is why I'm going to combine all of these people together. And then we will nest them like this is Pennsylvania's ethnicity. This is Wisconsin's ethnicity. This is Minnesota's ethnicity. But we're going to use one large, giant data set to look across all ethnicities, 7,000 responses. It's going to be beautiful. Keep an eye on Norwegian when we get to some of these other states. That was and Swedish, by the way. That they're not that big here. They will be in other states like Minnesota and Wisconsin. They will grow. But in Pennsylvania, it's a little bit more, what's the word? A little bit more rough. It's a little tougher. They're not like, Minnesota nice, Wisconsin nice. Don't you know, Bobby? Don't you know, right? That identity is not part of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's a rougher place. You got the tri-state area where you have Italians, you have non-whites, right? And then you have out in the coal country where it's a tougher way of life. And tougher groups tend to be Catholic. Norwegians and Swedish are not, in large part. All right, so let's scoot on down a little bit. You can see how they vote, and they vote a lot. But that German number for certain to vote is a big number. Big number. That's bad news for Joe Biden. Very bad news for Joe Biden. Why? Because that's going to help Trump not only do better in some of the areas of the state where he slipped a little, but when we see certainty to vote that high, it's obviously an indication that he's going to squeeze a lot more votes out. So it's great if you win a county 70-30 and it's 60% turnout. It's better if you win a county 70-30 and it's 70% turnout, okay? Or whatever it may be. All right, so you can see the unlikely voters versus voters. The English have quite a bit of unlikely this time. That was not the case in 2020. Big difference. They were all going to vote and they could not stand Donald Trump. Okay. And just to give you guys, before I move forward, hold on. I meant to get the comparison for all of this. Hold on. Because I want to give you guys the leads. Load up. I want to give you the leads from 2020 so you guys will know. All right. Even looking at, yeah, wow. So among English, for instance, Joe Biden was leading and they were voting at very high rates. Right now, his approval is terrible among them. I mean, it's not good, period, in the state of Pennsylvania. It's not one of the worst. The worst is like in Ohio, in Iowa. His approval rating is really bad, but he's still at least in the low 40s in Pennsylvania. I say at least, but that's awful. And you can see there, and again, there's overlap between Americans and English. There is, even in the census, there will be. And a lot of times they'll combine them. But you can actually see that Americans are roughly close to a little bit less than the overall statewide average, but they're very, very close to it. When you're looking at English, however, you would expect Joe Biden to be doing a lot better among those people. Montgomery, Delaware, right? And he's not. He's doing very poorly. But look at among Germans. Ouch. 11% approve, 19% somewhat, or 11% strongly approve, 19% somewhat approve. That at least compares to another, almost twice as many English and Americans who say they strongly approve. And then, of course, when we're looking at some of the smaller groups, Italians and whatnot, that number with Italians was shocking to me. I was actually thinking it's probably, again, very small sample. So you got to be careful when you're looking at this, but you got to look for patterns across all the different states because, the larger you're looking in the group, and obviously the lower the sampling error for that subgroup is going to be. This looks like a big sampling error to me, but there are no undecideds. And Italians still disapprove of Joe Biden. They just disapprove of him by less than some of the others. Non-white approval is around 70. Ballpark. Norwegian is still a little bit solid, right? And that's something you're going to have to keep an eye on when we get... Maybe, Rich, it's only 7. We'll see. That's true. And when we get to some of the states with larger Norwegian populations, we'll look at that. All right, Scott Irish, very, very small sample sizes, but you can see what's going on here. All right, so moving on to the primaries. Among those who call themselves American, Trump is thumping everybody. At least among the English, where he is still thumping, Haley and, DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy have some support. Haley actually has some support with Germans. Again, it could just be small sampling error issue, situations, but the Irish, etc. Trump is just killing it. By the way, Russian's going to be very small in a state like Pennsylvania. There are some Russian enclaves in Pennsylvania. Watch them across all different states, because you would think, with everything we've heard, that Russians would be like 90-10 for Joe Biden. Trump is a Russian agent. They came here to get away from all of that. Just doesn't fit. All right. But moving on, you can also see that Joe Biden does well with roughly the same groups that Trump does. Americans, 66%. English, 69%. He's doing poorly with the Dutch, but it's very small. Germans, only 40 people we interviewed out of this entire survey. It's a big survey. Only 40 of them only 40 Germans said they were going to vote in the Democratic primary. Think about that for a second. In a state with a large subset of German ethnic voters, so few intend to participate in the Democratic primary. It's another bad sign for Joe Biden. It is. It just is. It tells you that, look at that compared to Republicans. You would think, it's not twice as many, but it's almost. It's about 1.5% as much. 1.5 more. All right. So when it comes to people who can be persuaded, I just threw this in here for you guys to see. But in truth, you see the English are still somewhat persuadable. Why? Because a lot of them are Biden voters who are voting in the Democratic primary. Americans, same thing. So small with the French, it doesn't matter. You see people roughly cut in half. So why does that matter? It matters because we know about 70% plus of Trump's vote is not persuadable. So when you're look at the biggest sampling there, Americans, 56% of them say they cannot be persuaded to change their mind. We know that of them, they are mostly Trump supporters. And same thing goes with the English, by the way. All right, looking at Trump v. Biden, Trump actually leads with both English and those who identify as American. It's stunning. Stunning. I imagine if we would have gone back to 2016, we would have seen something pretty close as well. But there should have been a bigger gap between people who identify as English. It's entirely possible. Again, sampling errors for subgroups are higher. There's a large number of them that are saying, I'm going to vote for another third-party candidate, a few percentage points higher than those who say they're American. But man, guys, man. Same thing, by the way, for Germans, but you can see Trump is crushing him by 10 points. Among those who identify as German, Trump is way ahead. And it's roughly what he was ahead by a little bit more in 2020 among all Germans that we'd spoken with, about 187 of them in that poll who told us they were. Larger sample size absolutely could account for it, but it didn't matter because Biden was beating him with the English and those who identify as native. So, he needed that 15 points to make it closer. This time, he's got more room because he is doing better with these other groups. I'm honestly a little bit surprised by this. Trump is also giving him pretty good thumping with Italians, and Joe is winning with the Irish, which doesn't surprise me at all. And the Scottish and Scot-Irish. So he's holding Irish, Scot-Irish, Scots. Here's something, when we combine them next week and we take a look at that, that's something we'll have to drill into a little bit more. But whether or not that's just small sampling errors or whether it's true across larger data sets. But it's different. Point being, I guess I'm just trying to say, it's a much different picture than what we saw in 2020. Trump was doing really good among Germans, doing really good among Italians, not so well with English and American ethnic groups. And they're still large. They're still the biggest part. I mean, those who say, I'm an American, is still the biggest group. Stunning. This did not surprise me that Trump is winning by that much. This did. That absolutely did. When you combine those groups last time, for English and American, Biden was leading by a few points. Well, clearly now he's getting crushed. It's 43-39 among those who say they're American, and those who say they're English is 44-31. Ouch. It's just different. And why I'm looking at the Italian number, even though it's small, Bucks County. Bucks County. A lot of Italians in Bucks County. Republicans could not get them out. Caroline Carluccio lost Bucks County badly. Trump has to keep it close if he wants to win the state statewide, which he is right now. It leans slightly to Joe Biden by a few points. That's it. And in the northeastern part of the state, by the way, Lackawanna is always the tough one to pull away from any Democrat, but certainly is going to be difficult to pull away from Joe Biden. But then when you look around where Trump does do really well, Luzerne, Pike, Northampton, where there was a complete and total collapse of I don't care what they say. Guys, county executives do not step down and call their elections failures if the election was credible. I'm sorry. They can say that that the original vote intent was still captured. It was human error. That system has been the target of criticism from election experts and watchers on the right and left for years. They ignored everybody until it happened. Was anyone even going to know that it happened? Or was it just going to slide under the rug? Northampton almost always votes like Erie County, identically. And it did not. And in the one election, it did not. They just happen to have issues with correctly identifying a voter's intention. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. There is nothing in politics is ever coincidental. Not like this. Don't give me turnout crap. Republicans were outclassed all over Pennsylvania. We still saw the same expected vote result in the other counties as well. It is only in the one county with that failure, according to his own words, where there was a discrepancy that just does not make any sense, especially since for those of us who were there that night, and if you guys were watching on YouTube or on Locals, because it was a supporter only thing, we had Sean Parnell on. We watched it happen in real time. Erie County and Northampton both had similar mail-in vote margins, although Northampton was slightly more Democratic. But the election day margins did what they do, pulled it back. And by the time we were at 67.5% estimated vote reported, Caroline Carluccio was just about 2 points away from flipping it. And by the time the next votes from election day batches were counted and tallied and tabulated, she had pulled ahead in Erie County. The margins were almost identical at just under 70% of the estimated vote. Northampton did not report that next batch. Things went crazy. We heard there were problems. And the next thing you know, everything is revised, retallied, and it doesn't look anything like that anymore. That does not pass the smell test. Whether even if it was intentional or not is totally irrelevant. We all watched it happen in real time. So don't let them tell you you cannot believe your lying eyes. All right, moving on. When there is, again, you have some of these groups that significantly want to vote third party. And folks, again, a word on that. The only thing I can tell you is this is why turnout matters. And it matters a lot. You cannot leave a whole bunch. And now especially, well, you don't need a date. The signature doesn't have to match. First time voter, no problem. You screw up how it's, there is not even signature verification in Pennsylvania anymore. That's like not a thing. So you leave batches on the table, someone's going to grab them. It's like going to take a leak in a bar, folks, and leaving the keys to your Mercedes on the bar with your wallet. You're begging for somebody to do something. All right, with Kennedy on the ballot, which you can see, Trump takes a bigger lead, right? If I remember correctly. Nah, it's about 40.5. It's 3.5, and then it goes to 3.9. All right, so with Trump on the ballot, you can see that his support among Americans, actually those who are of American ethnicity, right? Natives, whatever you want to call them, actually ticks up. This is this weird phenomena we saw with Trump in not normally when you just add Kennedy to the ballot, but when everyone else gets added to the ballot, we see this happening. It's very weird. Where Trump's support either refuses to fall or actually ticks up. It's really astonishing. By the way, Pennsylvania is one of the states where, you know, like Stein and others, West may have a difficult time getting on the ballot. Libertarian probably will get on the ballot. It's going to be tough, all right, for some of these people to get on the ballot in Pennsylvania. But it still isn't as bad as like Georgia or Arizona. So it is possible. Minnesota, Michigan, folks, they'll be on the ballot. In Minnesota especially, it was like 9 people, remember? So again, we see Americans actually tick up slightly. Dutch fell a little bit, but the English also, you can see support for Trump fall a little bit, but Biden's actually tick up a little bit. But Biden really gets hammered here, loses a couple of points among Americans, and Germans barely budge for either man. They lose about an interview each. That's nothing. Same thing with Italians. Biden actually gets one more, which is a little bit weird. So you can see that that's an odd, weird, strange occurrence. Oh no, Trump gets one more. My eyes are playing tricks on me. Sorry. The Irish. But again, very small. What about non-white? Trump actually lost a little bit with the non-white. Biden held firm. And then we go from the Norwegians. Actually, another one person who was Norwegian picked Trump. Very small samples, so we're just going to move on here. Except for other. There was some larger ones with other. But you can see generally it's holding. The same thing holds. And Kennedy, where is he getting, if you want to play this game a little bit, where is he getting some more smaller fringe groups, some Polish, French, and even Dutch and Danish. It's not a lot. It looks like when it says 18.7, understand that represents a single interview. All right. So just trying to be careful here. And another third party still gets some votes as well. Yeah. Moving on. Americans, when you do 5-way, still about the same for Trump. Biden, what was that? 231 before. What do you get before? 230. He actually gets a little bit. Trump loses 3, but it's generally roughly the same margin because it's a larger sample. The English, Biden doesn't fare any better. Trump, again, maintains 44%. It just doesn't fall. It stays, marginally where it was before. The same thing with ethnic Germans. Biden keeps his lead with Irish. It's like, where would you think Kennedy would get some of the support? I would think Scott Irish, actually. Scott Irish. Nope. It's not. He gets it from, Dutch support, a little bit of American, which is a large sample. 52 interviews. That's 8% of the overall American nativist ethnicity. And then 28 among English, 11%. Yeah, sticking with the French. We only spoke to 7 people who were French. Of them, 2 picked Kennedy. Interesting. And Polish support. If we had Robert Barnes on, he'd probably say those are older Catholics. And I bet you he's right. I bet you if we crossed them with age, that's exactly who they would be. Older Catholics who remember his dad's, the family name. They remember the family name with fondness. And as far as the rest of them go, I shouldn't have pulled that back real quick. I should have showed you Stein. But as far as the rest of them go, it's hard because you're talking about so little, so little of a 17 interviews for Jill Stein, 14 for Cornel West. It's here and there. There really is nothing you can glean from this. Actually, doesn't surprise me, Laura, that 2 of the 7 Norwegians picked Cornel West. There can be some serious liberal, populist even, but like old school liberal where, they hate the man. That could be part, and for some reason they stubbornly remain on the left. Even though I think audience watching here knows, I don't have to convince you that the left is the man these days, right? Totally. Well, Laura says always was, maybe. That's you can make that case, Laura. You can make that case. But Republicans were like, the lovers of the administrative state and stuff. They were. All right, let's leave Minnesota to dead last, actually. Yeah, because some of these groups will grow as we move on, and some of them will fall. It's like the further out you get. Oops, is that one it? If you see it, you see it. Big deal. Nope, that's it. The further out we get, the more Scandinavian the electorate becomes. It's kind of funny too. Before we move, I talk about Wisconsin real quick in a second, but I was one day talking to Steve Bannon about the one trip to Minnesota they made in 2016, and when you look at a lot of these Scandinavian voting groups, they vote Democrat a lot. Yet if you were to go back and look at that rally, and just from what he told me, he was like, dude, there was like a sea of Vikings out there, and we're going to close the border and kick them out. And they're all like, yeah, it looked like Ragnar about to invade England for the first time. Hilarious, but I wonder if a lot of them just didn't have vote history before. And as it turns out, when I went back and looked through, a reporter had asked me about some old polling from 2016. So I was looking, I had it like kind of handy, and about 18% said they had not voted, and their ages wildly were all over the place. So in order to make Minnesota that close and to do that well with some of these ethnic groups, that's what Trump had to do, bring some of those people into the electorate. And then he clearly won some of those others that had been voting Democrat for years, because the Democrats in Minnesota are smart. They refuse to like fully integrate with the National Democratic Party, and they've long been an autonomous organization, which still, I'm not saying they honor it. I'm just saying that they certainly still pay lip service to like populist principles and tenets that made them that party. And they're not that anymore. But, for once upon a time, the party of the Iron Range, right? When the rich, white, non-Iron Range worker was voting Republican, So things change. All right. So bringing them up because they do matter. And, they matter everywhere. Everyone matters. You know what I mean? All right. So I was just thinking about, I said Barnes before. You would love this. Look at participation in the Badger State among some of these smaller groups of like Swedes and Norwegians. Norwegians in Minnesota tend to be a little bit more favorable to Republicans. Same thing. We found the opposite here. It's a little bit weird. Again, some small subgroups that'll happen. It will be the opposite though in Minnesota. You'll see. And then, of course, Germans were more heavily Republican in Wisconsin than we did even see them in Pennsylvania, which is a good thing for the Republican Party. But again, then when we see the English, they are much closer to what I would have expected to see in Pennsylvania, and we didn't. All right, so just keep an eye on that as we go. And you can kind of, it forecasts it when you're looking at primary participation screeners. You can already see who's going to go where, right? Some of the Danish, more conservative. We're only talking about a few interviews here, but you can see that. Whereas Americans and English, much closer. Americans leaning slightly more to the Republican primary participation than English. Although the difference even here with the English is astonishing. And again, if you pull up the battleground polls from 2020, you're going to see a very different picture. Biden had marginally higher leads with them, in some states, but in others, he was just blowing Trump out. Minnesota was one of them. All right. So Germans were always more Trumpy, but they're 25 points Trumpy now. I mean, you're going to see that in a second. All right. So among those who are likely versus unlikely, again, good sign for Republicans in the state because some of their ethnic groups are more certain or, more, they're reporting a higher certainty to vote. And that's weird considering some of these likely voter models have helped Biden. Why does it seem to help Trump in other aspects? Because the higher the turnout, the better it will be for Donald Trump. I'm just going to say this over and over again because I know I'm right. 100% know I'm right. Modest turnout is going to help Democrats. They're doing better with some older groups that vote and vote all the time. And of course, educated people vote at higher rates. So the higher the turnout, the more, I'm trying to be careful here, the more normies will be in the electorate. All right? The more normies, the better Republicans will do. Let's look at his abysmal approval rating. In Wisconsin, it's not, again, as bad as some of the other states, but it's friggin' bad. I mean, when you're posting 40 55s on the routine, and actually it's 40 56 in Wisconsin, when you're posting that routinely, it's not good. I went back and looked the other day, actually. In Minnesota, one of the more liberal, obviously, of the big six that we do, Trump's approval rating with independents was really bad. It was like 31% or something like that. However, he's still at about 20% who said they strongly approve of the job he's doing. Or no, 16%, something like that. Joe Biden, 5. His approval rating is in the 20s with independents in Minnesota, and 5% said they strongly approve. That's all. And Biden's in a really bad spot here. Really bad spot. So looking at who does approve and who doesn't, Obviously, the Danes absolutely cannot stand him now at this point. The others are about 50-50. Polls in Wisconsin, anyway, have soured on Joe Biden pretty badly. Scots Irish, he holds them. Italians in Wisconsin are very negative on Joe Biden. Very small sample size. Let's get to some of the bigger sample sizes, though. When we get to Germans, he's only about at 35%, with fully more than 6 in 10 saying that they disapprove of the job he's doing. French, they tend to be more liberal. It's small, but this is everywhere. It could be 12, ethnic French in 2020 or now, and we would still see roughly the same numbers. By the way, that's what makes Maine such a difficult state to carry at the state level for a Republican, because you might be shocked to find out how many French Catholics there are, French Canadian settlers there were that made up that state and still have that ethnic origin. And they are more liberal. They're more, I would say, they're more democratic. I don't know if that's an accurate thing to even call it at this point. He does a little bit better with the Dutch, but it is a smaller population. So focusing on American and English and German, which is huge. And then, of course, the Scandinavians combined, right? Swedish, Norwegian, Danes combined is a bleaker picture for him when you consider he was killing it with Swedes in 2020, killing it. There are going to be a lot of Norwegian votes in Wisconsin, and currently it's not looking great for him. With Americans, it is about the statewide, ballpark across the board. It's about what it is statewide. Among English, he's doing better. This is more like what I would say: 23% strongly approve, 27% somewhat approve, for a grand total of a little over 50% who do approve of the job Joe Biden is doing. Every time I release a poll, there's somebody, and I just looked at one on Getter before I hit the button to go live here, and people are like, fake polls, nobody approves of Biden. How could you have Biden that high? 40-something% in Wisconsin do not approve. Yeah, they do. And that's what we're doing this for. Hopefully people get an understanding that not everybody is like them. You fall into one of these groups, even if it's other, if you're non-white or something. You fall into one of these groups somewhere, don't you? But all of these different groups of people have different experiences. They have different things in their mind when they're making a rational policy decision. Overall, he's underwater, and they're not good numbers for him. But I get asked every time we release a poll, how could you have Biden that high? Because we are a deeply, deeply polarized country. You could have Joe Biden found guilty of taking bribes from China, and he's still going to win the vast majority plus of Democrats. Like the 25% of Democrats are not going to vote for Donald Trump or any other Republican, even if that were to happen, and vice versa. Some felony conviction in one of these kangaroo courts for Joe Biden, for Donald Trump, is not going to cause an exodus of a quarter of the damn Republican Party. We are just way too polarized. All right. Looking at it in a primary context, really shouldn't shock you that Trump does that much better with Americans versus English. Americans are not as bougie as those who would say they are English. There are some funny comments on locals before, and Laura probably took some and threw a bunch in the thing she did. All right, so I'll slow up and see if I'm missing anything. I saw a great Dan. I just caught a glimpse of your comment. That's a good one too. Yeah, I know. That drearier. We're going to get to the Santos thing. I like to try to stay in my lane, but that is in my lane, that question. That's a purview of it. So when we're talking about these ethnic groups, by the way, yeah. Yeah, I know. I think they are trying to hurt themselves. I don't know what they're doing. I just don't know what they're doing. I mean, I know what they're doing. I just don't. I don't agree. I don't agree with it. I can't identify with it at all. Like, empathize or anything.
Maybe
They're
can
cowards. They are
you
cowards. What?
be more clear? You're answering a question, but people don't know the question.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Drury. I'll get back to It's about Santos. I'll hit it in a second though. We'll leave that until after. It's 12:47. Let me at least get to the end of the hour, and then we'll start hitting the questions, because some of the questions I'm looking at require a little bit more. Right. So, you can see Trump here is doing better with Scandinavian ethnicities in Wisconsin. This is a group that actually did have somewhat of a problem with him, especially Norwegians, when it came to Ted Cruz. If you remember, Ted Cruz carried Wisconsin against Donald Trump in the 2016 Republican nomination. That is not going to happen this time. There is no group where either DeSantis or Nikki Haley, when you're looking at it at a much more granular level like this, even though we're talking about smaller sample sizes, I just don't see it. This is beyond liberal, conservative, moderate. I'm a self-identified Republican, because of course Wisconsin has no registration by party. We're beyond that. It's much more granular, and you can very clearly see that there just isn't a whole lot. DeSantis does better with some Italians, but there's just not a whole lot of Italians in Wisconsin. The groups that have the biggest say in the electorate are overwhelmingly behind Donald Trump. There's some opportunity with English ethnicity voters, but it's just not enough. Some of the Germans that are not German Catholic, they're German Protestants. Nikki Haley and DeSantis are doing better with them, but most still are Catholic, and Trump is doing much better with the Catholic vote than anybody. So again, he's got a majority. Americans 58, English 51.6, overall 54.2% of the vote to 13 and 12. It's just going to be tough. There would have to be some massive change in momentum due to events on the ground. And Iowa and Wisconsin are much closer than, say, Iowa to Pennsylvania, or Iowa to even Minnesota or Michigan. They are much closer to each other. So shouldn't it all surprise you that first Iowa was Trump's weakest state? When I say weakest, he's still above 50%. He is in our poll and one other poll, and I'm fine with that, because I think we're right. But it's barely above 50. And then Wisconsin, he's above 50 as well, but he's a little bit more. 54% is a solid number, especially when you have so many people who are refusing to change their mind. And Wisconsin is the least solid state for Trump when it comes to support being totally dug in. And it's still historically huge. It's just not 70%, 80%. But it's still over a majority of Trump's support that is dug in. All right, so looking at Biden, doing very well with whatever you want to call them, nativists, Germans, English, even Scandinavians. He's doing it. There's just, I would say there's no way to beat Joe Biden in Wisconsin. If they're looking for some kind of diamond in the rough, they should probably stick to New Hampshire, where the rules got screwed up. New Hampshire is not happy that Joe Biden took away their first in the nation status, because he's rigging the system. That's what he's doing. He's rigging the primary vote to front load James Clyburn's black vote machine, so he doesn't have an early embarrassment. Why? Because Joe Biden should never have won the 2020 Democratic nomination. Barack Obama won it for him. He got crushed in the early states until South Carolina. He was afraid that there would be a similar embarrassment. In Iowa, despite some polls, Monmouth, I'm looking at you, and others, putting out numbers that Biden is ahead in the Iowa caucus, which was ridiculous. He barely campaigned there, and everyone knows that either Bernie or Buttigieg were doing a lot more work, and not only a lot more work, but the polling showed that they had better support. And yet some of these people were just coming up with Biden pluses. It was insane. They took one look at that guy and they said, no way. He goes to New Hampshire, he gets thrashed. Nevada, 4th place. He was 8 points ahead of Bernie with black voters. That's it. So a meltdown happens in the media and in Democratic circles. They got 2 weeks to change this story before South Carolina votes. And Barack Obama did what he had to do. He pulled strings. He twisted elbows. He threatened. He bribed. He sold cabinet positions. That's why you have Pete Buttigieg, by the way, as transportation secretary right now. He did what he had to do to make sure that Biden beat Bernie. Among those who cannot be persuaded, you have the English, who still are also, along with Americans that still are able to change their mind. So are Germans. I mean, again, Wisconsin is like the least dug in. But of that 43.5% who say that they cannot be persuaded to change their mind, again, they are mostly Trump voters. It's astonishing how many, even when you're talking about adding Democrats to it as well, Democrat primary voters, it's astonishing how Trump dominates among that. Like, nobody else has support like that. It's really amazing. All right, so Biden v. Trump with the generic third party. Americans, Trump has a 2-point lead. That tells me it's going to be a very close race. English. That's more what I would expect. More what I would have expected. Combining Americans and English in 2020, which we did, Biden had a 3-point lead. And then Trump was winning with Germans by about 9 points. Here, he is winning by more than that. So that's why he has a lead. It's really, that simple. Biden holding on to his Irish. But you have some of these Norwegians very close, very, very, very close. Swedish actually are with Trump, which bodes well for him in Minnesota, by the way. Danish as well. We're talking about small samples. So again, I can't wait till we combine these all together. But this is a different picture. And by the way, for the record, we overstated Biden in Wisconsin in 2020. Shit, people say. We had Biden up by 2 points. He won by 0.6%. 0.6. So very clearly things have changed. Things have most definitely changed. Americans make up a big chunk. The Native American ethnicity makes up a big chunk of that third-party vote, but so does Germans, something Trump's going to have to watch out for. What's helping him right now is that some of Biden's other groups, like the Irish, are also doing that. The Italians, that actually, they back Trump. There's just not a lot of Italians in Wisconsin. But yeah, I mean, that's not a lot. You know what I mean? Compared to like Philadelphia and Bucks County. And then with Kennedy in the race, the American, again, Trump's lead is about 3 points if I'm rounding. The English is, again, that's a good vote. A very good vote for Joe Biden. They just don't warm, right? This is that group we're talking about in the emerging Republican majority. They're tough. They're tough for all Republicans, by the way. It's just that with Trump, it's something they have like this. Even though he's closed the gap, he's not getting killed like he was in 2020. And I mean, really bad in some of those states. I would say expect there to be a pretty identifiable ceiling to his level of support among those who identify as English. The snooty. I don't want to insult anybody, but I'm trying to figure out a good way to paint them to people. So I wish you would just tune in to the emerging Republican majority, and then you would know. I wouldn't have to say it because Kevin Phillips does a great job explaining it himself. They are in the perpetual mid-2000s mindset. Oh, that's for GOPs and their loss. And why is Team GOP? Why do they have no outreach? Yeah. And they think that's a group of voters where they think all they have to do is be a little bit more moderate, right? Somebody like George Santos comes along, you got to get rid of him. You can't be associated with somebody like George Santos. Otherwise, the silk stocking class may have a problem with us. They have a problem with you anyway. If we polled Haley or maybe even DeSantis, maybe they would do marginally better with these people, but it wouldn't matter because they wouldn't do well with Germans. They wouldn't do well with Norwegians. They sure as hell would not do well with Swedish. Swedish is why they just keep getting blown out in some of the parts of the state that we have gone over and over and over. Scandinavians in general, I would say, is the better thing to say. There's a lot of Norwegians, by the way, in the western, southwestern part of the state. Salk, Juneau. You've got to crank up the turnout numbers. Otherwise, you're going to lose. If you're a Republican, you're going to lose. Democrats have a better, is that the word? They have a more dedicated base. They have a more built-in advantage because a lot of these ethnic voting patterns favor them in these areas. It was called the Blue Wall for a reason. It had voted for them for years. They have ancestral ties to that party. And it takes a lot. You read any of these so-called emerging majority books, whether it's Phillips or Texera, who wrote about the emerging Democratic majority, you'll start to get a sense of what it takes to break some of these connections. There are relationships that have been built. There's family history. It takes a lot. And Democrats have more connection. Their connective tissue is stronger. All right, as you can see here, Trump support, American, nativist, whatever you want to call it, doesn't move. English, Joe Biden gets chipped a little bit, gets chipped away a little bit. The problem for Biden is you throw somebody like a West in there. See how West takes 5%? He's like virtue signalers. Again, I don't know how to comment without sounding like I'm criticizing. But because I really don't want to do that. But it's really difficult to explain it without doing that. There are going to be people within that group, more so than Americans, more so than Germans, who are going to feel like obligated, I think is a way to put it. And then you'll have some that are just disconnected from the political system that will look at somebody like a Kennedy and say, okay, you know what, I could go for a guy like that. And that you'll find them among the German ethnicities and other even more peripheral, I would say, groups that are smaller, much smaller subsets. And by the way, that includes some that are Scandinavian, right? So that's Wisconsin. What do I get? It's 101. You know what? Let's leave Minnesota for a hot minute. Yeah, let's leave Minnesota for a hot minute. I'm going to take a real quick break, and then we're going to do some questions. I'll come back to Minnesota a little bit. I'm looking at some of them, and I feel like I can weave Minnesota into one of these questions anyway. But let's take a real quick minute to talk about our friends at Jam and Bean. JAMN Bean.com. By the way, hang on one second, Laura. I want to grab some of these things we just got. Oh, yeah, look at that. Oh, yeah. You know, I always go right for the coffee usually, but anytime they send me some of this new stuff, I'm dying to share it with you. All right. Whether you get a subscription, anything I'm about to show you, or, you know, you just keep it real, keep it original, the coffee, of course, and the gourmet popcorn, use the promo code TPP40 at checkout. That will get you 40% off of that initial subscription cost right off the rip. And then every month when they re-up, you'll still get 10% off from that original cost. Let me show you some of the new stuff they sent us because it's delicious. Freeze-dried organic apples. Ooh, Woo! My son and I ate them last night, and they were absolutely delicious. I haven't had a chance to have one of these right now. I haven't had a chance to have one of these. I'm going to have one right now. And then the freeze-dried Skittles, I guess they heard me say how much I like them, and they sent me a big bunch of them. These are amazing. How does the process work, Laura? Because it's like, if you look at them, guys, it's literally a Skittle. I don't know how the process works. I would love for them to show me one day. I got to get out there. Get the, you're first of all, they're just great people. That's number one. Just patriots through and through. They really are. I love every color, so I don't care. I'll take the screen. You can see it, like they explode when they freeze dry. And you just pop them in your mouth. You don't bite them. You just sit there and let them sit in your mouth, and they get soft and disappear. And then they sent, which my son was over the moon about, freeze-dried saltwater taffy. Flavor? Cookie dough. Chocolate chip cookie dough. Oh, my God. I'm going to have one of those in a little bit. And, of course, I'm a sucker for their popcorn, and I'm a sucker for pumpkin spice. And they put together the dopest flavor for the holidays. Pumpkin spice and vanilla. Oh. And I like the savory stuff. I really do. But I'm the guy who goes into the grocery store in the fall when they start to release all of the creamers that are pumpkin spice. I'm the guy that you can't stand. I'll grab 3 of them at a time and just stack them in the refrigerator I have outside in the garage. Right, Laura? I'm not lying. Because I know by the time Christmas comes around, we're basically out of them already. And every year, my family's like, Rich, man, what are you doing? That's wrong. Dad, why do you have 8, 10 creamers out in the refrigerator? Well, I will have them when Halloween is gone and Thanksgiving, they run out by Thanksgiving. I will still have them. I didn't buy as many as I needed this year. And tragically, I ran out. So I was really happy to see the pumpkin spice and vanilla flavored popcorn because I had just run out. So thanks, guys. Again, use the promo code TPP40 at checkout. So good. And get yourself 40% off of that subscription and 10% every month when it renews. In between answering one of your questions, I'm actually going to be trying this freeze-dried saltwater taffy, which I absolutely love. Let me pull up Minnesota, and then before we even get into it, I'm going to pop it up on the screen, but before we even get into it, we'll do some of your questions. All right. Oh, okay. That's a question. Bear with me. I'm going to grab something that some of you are not going to like, but tough crap, because this is what it is. This is what matters. You want me to answer the question, I'm going to have to answer it the right way, the truthful way. All right. So, whoops, that's too big. Let me get rid of this cross tab for 1 second here and pop up something else. And I will answer your question. It's a great question. I'm going to have to pop you out of here, Laura, right? All right. Rich, if the Dems can get an abortion amendments on the ballot in swing states, what kind of an impact do you think it will have? That is a fantastic question. And that was from Rumble. You're a soul. Yep. You rush, laugh out loud. Or no, you rush y'all. Right? Is that it? I don't know. Great question. It depends who the nominee is for the Republican Party. It depends if something happens and, historically crazy. And I don't even want to say it out loud because that's what I personally am concerned about. Donald Trump has successfully threaded this needle. It will not help him and will not hurt him like it will hurt other candidates, including Senate candidates. That's what Democrats, if I was the Democratic Party, and they don't, I don't need to watch what I say. They're smart. They're smart enough to understand what I'm about to say, and they're going to try to do this. I would try to get these amendments and initiatives on the ballot in the battleground states and in the states that they have to defend. They have 20 some states to defend on the map. The Senate map for Democrats is just absolutely ugly this year. And Republicans only have 11. And I'm not talking about even those that are competitive. Last night, I didn't want to discuss it that much because I really just don't think it matters. I'm just going to be honest with you, plain as day. I think that Ron DeSantis did better than anybody expected him to do against Gavin Newsom. I just don't think people understand. Yeah, of course Gavin Newsom lies. Of course California is run like a dump. Of course Ron DeSantis is doing a better job being a governor of his state. Of course Florida is a better state to live in than California. California is too expensive. It's a dump and you're not free. Sorry. In Florida, it's a totally different ballgame. And it's a shame because California has a lot of really gorgeous places. I mean, people, it's true. The Golden State, it's called the Golden State for a reason at one point. It's sad, frankly. The land of Nixon and Reagan and just being destroyed systematically. But he's a slimy, crafty little booger. And Gavin Newsom's job last night was not to go there and like spit facts and beat Ron DeSantis on policy, which DeSantis beat him on policy, I think, except for this, he walked into the COVID thing and he got railed on COVID because the truth is not on DeSantis' side. He opened before Gavin Newsom, of course. The state unemployment rates, the state uninsured rates we hammered over and over again very clearly show the damage that Gavin Newsom did to the state of California by keeping it closed longer than places like Florida and elsewhere. And they were doing that to try to cut into Trump's Achilles heel, which was the economy. States like New York and California are large shares of the overall insured unemployment rate, of the overall unemployment rate, the jobs reports, the monthly, employment situation that comes out from Bureau of Labor Statistics. So if you have some blue state governors, big blue state governors in Illinois, New York, California, doing what they did, you can really hurt Trump politically by those monthly numbers coming out and just being not as good as you would hope them to be. That being said, he closed his state. I'm not going to go over this again. Every time somebody argues with me, I find most of the time, you're not from Florida. You did not live there when it happened. The state was friggin' closed. Get over it. So he didn't do what he should have been. And I mean, Ron DeSantis, didn't do what on that issue, what he should have been doing the entire time. Yes, we listened to the experts like everybody else, but we got wise to them before everybody else and put liberty first. And that's the end of it. It's okay to say you got duped first, dude. You can talk over Gavin all you want when he's talking about how you jabbed the oldest World War II veteran in the country. You did it. All right. And then there was the moment everybody knew it was coming. And this is it. Here it comes.
The American people should know this. I'll answer it for Ron DeSantis. Can't answer it. He will sign that extreme.
Okay, let me move on.
Man. American people should know that.
I'm calling.
Hannity tried to talk over him, but it doesn't matter because he clipped it. It's all over Twitter right now. That's what people are going to talk about. That and some of the other efforts to try to embarrass Ron DeSantis. What do we have in common, Sean? Neither one of us are going to be the nominee for our party in 2024. I mean, it was just one of those after another. The poop map, obviously they had it canned, but it was good stuff. I mean, it was. And for people who don't know, Ron DeSantis literally pulled out a map of San Francisco where there's human feces all over the place. It's disgusting. But again, they're not going to talk about that. That clip is going to go up. And if you think Minnesota is going to be close, like it is now, with a 6-week abortion ban candidate leading the party, then I really can't help you. I don't know what you're doing watching the show. I thought you were here to learn facts. Look at what happened in Wisconsin. Look at what they did in Ohio. It will absolutely hurt the party all up and down the ticket. if they don't have somebody who threaded the needle on the abortion issue. And that's what Gavin Newsom was doing there, setting that up. And he did. All right. So who do I think won the debate? Well, on policy, very clearly, Ron DeSantis won. But policy is not all that matters. I'm sorry, it's just not. And he didn't win it by so much because he walked into traps like that. And that's what some of these people are going to vote on. Remember that somewhat disapprove. Somewhat disapprove. Trump outperforms other Republicans, Senate, whatever it may be. He did it in 22. He's doing it now among that group who say, I somewhat disapprove of the job Joe Biden is doing. It's a big chunk. They win 90% plus of those who say, I strongly disapprove. That's not enough. It's not enough. And when it comes to the abortion issue, some of those voters that actually do care are in that. And you have to give them peace of mind that they can say, I'm not making a risky choice here that could take away someone's rights. And putting myself first, the economy, other things that are wrong with the country. I want to put those things first, but I may not be able to because I may not be able to trust candidate A or B on these other things, with abortion being one of them. That's why Iowa's close. When we polled Iowa with DeSantis against Biden, it's close. That's why it's close in Ohio. We're not the only ones. It's a 14-point blowout for Donald Trump. That crap matters. So, they're all going nuts on the little Twitter feed. You're such a grifter, Barris. You guys are going to be gone in a couple of months. You know that, right? All right. So, you burned every bridge, too. It's really sad. You burned all these bridges. You killed this guy. You never even, you did not want to do this debate when you thought that polls were real and you were doing better in them. And my concern from the beginning for Republicans not thinking clearly is that they would do exactly what you rush y'all's talking about. Expose themselves. And then if Democrats do, and they are going to, is the answer to that question. They're going to do this. Just like George Bush and Karl Rove. 20 years ago, put value voter issues in amendments and in initiatives, statewide vote in states that mattered, and help George Bush. They're going to do the same thing. All right. They're not dumb. They know what works. And unfortunately, that's really it. What do I think of the rumors that Ben Carson is Trump's front runner for vice president at this time? I have heard these rumors. I'm just going to tell you right now. There has been this big push. I'm just going to say it, guys. All right. There's been this big push from people who support DeSantis and Haley, because as you heard Kevin McCarthy's comment the other day, oh, if Trump really wants to win, he should nominate Nikki Haley. If Trump wants to be assassinated, he should nominate Nikki Haley. That's Lyndon Johnson and heels right there, whispering to the CIA, I'll give you your war if you knock this guy out. And they will. If Trump wants to die an early, untimely death, he will nominate Nikki Haley. And I'm so serious about that, I make a comment like that at risk of knowing exactly what people are going to clip and say. Because I'm dead serious. And there have also been people saying maybe we should, have a reconciliation with Trump. And if he picks DeSantis as VP, then, we can all kumbaya and come together. I got a call the other day asking me what I thought about that. Here's what I said. They're just loud on Twitter. Donald Trump doesn't need him to win. He's going to win his own state by a larger margin than he would win his state. That's number one. Where would it help? What it would do, any of those two candidates might do, is piss off some of the Trump or bust voters that stuck with him through it. Secondly, I don't think I have to preach this to the former president. This is not the same as running against each other in a nomination. Oh, let's let the mess man win. This was, I made you, my family's being persecuted and prosecuted, and I needed everybody who I helped to stand by me, because everything, like Tucker said, it is so much bigger than me. This is about picking the leader of the free world without the regime using the power of the state to destroy that. And Laura's over here. This is the problem. Well, even Laura, like what you just said, actually is really profound, because anyone, left or right, who comes along trying to do something for the little guy is going to get this treatment. And everybody needed to recognize what friggin' time it was. And Trump feels betrayed, rightfully so. I don't see reconciliation. I don't see it. And I told them, you don't need it. You don't need it. Look at Pennsylvania. That's a state. He wins, it's over. Twice as many Biden voters are voting for Trump than Trump voters who say they would vote for Biden. More than twice, actually. It's more than twice. You don't need them. Because his voters, the people on Twitter, don't represent them. This is what, we tend to get things a little bit mixed up. The people who batten, all day on Twitter because apparently they don't have kids or wives or husbands or lives or anything. Or careers. All they do is sit on Twitter like, today, this Christmas, my heart grew 3 sizes that day. Give me a donation. They aren't the sum total of who tells a pollster or who will go to a voting booth and support them. Almost all of them will eventually vote for the nominee. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. So Carson is a better pick to reconcile than anybody. They love him. Traditional conservatives, let's take Iowa, for instance. You have some people, the Bob Vander Platzes of the world. Well, his own people love Ben Carson. Bob's going to tell them not to vote for Donald Trump with Ben Carson as his vice president. First of all, they're not going to listen to Bob. They didn't listen to him last time. And he had to watch on election night as the man he hates won his state by 10 points. A state he lost multiple times himself. And one that his chosen nominees and leaders just can't carry. Just can't carry it. No matter what they do. Must really burn. People always ask me all the time, like, what these people have against Trump. Well, he does a lot of things better than them in their own niche. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you have all these so-called faith leaders who are like, we're going to grow the church and we're going to turn out votes, and they don't do diddly. And here comes a not exactly religious. The guy believes in God. Knows the church he comes from. It's the Power of Positive Thinking Church, Laura, in New York. That's not the kind of leader that they want to see come along and then do everything they promised they would do for years and do it better than them, and better than they ever could, if they ever could, right? That jealousy is a powerful thing, folks. And it's jealousy. One of the pastors in Iowa got into a fight with Bob on Twitter and then went on Fox to talk about it. He said he's acting like a whore. That is what he said. He acts like a whore when it comes to politics. And this is not the first allegation, by the way. It's not. It's not $100,000 to get your name on a card. And he said, this is what's killing the church. Killing the church. And I'm listening to the back and forth. I mean, it's not like I got a bone in it or anything, but I've studied this. We've talked about it, actually. Gallup has studied it. Pew Research has studied it. And that guy is 100% correct. Nobody has done more to hurt American Christianity than Christian leaders. It's true. There is a very, very clear relationship between the fall of American evangelicalism and scandals surrounding people like Jimmy Swaggart and others. By the way, Catholics have had their own issues. There's a very, very, very clear impact on not only views of the Catholic Church, but attendance records and what do you call it? Like growth, joining the church when the Catholic priest scandal hit. Being judgmental hypocrites who don't live up to your own standards is like the worst possible thing you can do in politics. That's why you should probably practice the real brand of Christianity, which says you're flawed and fallible. There was only one perfect person to ever walk the earth. You're never going to be perfect. We believe in redemption and love and forgiveness. Is that what they preach? No, it's not. They pretend they're better than you while they have meltdowns with their ex-husbands on Facebook in public for all to see. And then call the husband all sorts of horrible names. Thou shalt not do this. And our pastor's ashamed of you. The pastor then has to come on and say, oh my God, what's going on? I never said that. I don't know what she's talking about. This is common. Somebody, and I'm not going to run them through. Why won't they just say, you know what? I believe in God. I am a Christian. I do the best I can, but I'm not perfect. If you had that attitude, then maybe when the paper runs a story about you having a swinger relationship with another woman and your wife wasn't there that one time when you thought it was just an understanding to have like 3 ways and oops, your wife's not there. So now she's accused. That woman's accusing you of rape. If you didn't come across as, I'm the leader of a group where conservative women preach to the rest of the country about how much better we are, then it wouldn't come down that hard on you. And one of the first scandals ever was actually a woman preacher who got caught having an affair. And she went on to fabricate this entire story about being stolen, kidnapped by Mexican gangs. This is what happened, and many of you, obviously, you're not around. You don't know about this stuff. Many of you probably do not even know who Jimmy Swaggart is and remember what I'm talking about. This stuff had profoundly negative impact on the church in this country. People began to see them as hypocrites and common whores, to use that pastor's phrase. I'll sell you this for XYZ. I'm better than you. I disapprove of you and your way of life, and I'm better than you. And then I fall way short of that. First of all, who the hell did Jesus Christ come and talk to? They have a completely asinine version of the faith. They mock everybody. This one's a this, that one's a this. I'm so virtuous. I'm so righteous. Did he go and speak to the virtuous? If Christ came here today, would he go talk to the Bob Vanderplatses of the world? Of course not. He's a Sadducee. Sorry. A Pharisee. He would go and see, does a doctor visit the healthy? Man. And the rest of the country is just, I don't need that crap. I actually can't wait to do the Christmas poll this year because I want to take a fresh look at this year of those nuns. You know, Dr. Steve Turley and I had a great conversation during one of our interviews, and I should have him on when we do the Christmas poll. We should bring on Dr. Steve Turley because he's so knowledgeable about this stuff. them saying they're, the rise of the nuns. Oh my God, it's the atheists are coming. They're going to kill us all. Many of them they're not atheists. They just don't want to join your church. Come on in to the Church of the Hypocrite every Sunday. And that's a group that's Republicans have been getting killed with. I can't imagine why. Not Trump, by the way. Not Trump. I wonder why. All right, let's take a real quick at Minnesota before we come back and wrap up the rest of the questions. You will very clearly see more of an English liberal tint, and you will see the challenges with Scandinavian groups. Okay. Swedish are much more liberal. You can see bigger sample sizes here now for all of these groups. Even Danes, which we're not talking about a huge amount, but the Danes to Norwegians to Swedish, you can see it, and it's clear as day. There is a big Swedish ethnicity vote in Minnesota, and right now they favor Democratic primary participation over Republican. That should be a sign. All right. Norwegians, however, favor Republican participation. And you have Danes, which are more Democratic, but they are a smaller group, and you got to be careful with that. We're going to look at the overall picture. I'm repeating this because of people who pop in and out and then take things out of context. We will look at the overall picture when we combine all ethnicity next week and look at these subgroups in larger samples together. All right. So, but you can see that, and that should foreshadow exactly what we're talking about. Here's one thing, though, that you need to know. Look at Swedes and how likely they are to vote. They're going to vote. They are going to vote. All right. And so are Norwegians. They're right there. That's a more Republican-friendly group. And then, of course, you have Americans who are a little bit less. That happens to be the most pro, well, not the most pro, but it's a pro Republican, pro-Trumpy group, and they need to keep an eye on that. All right. And Germans here are more split. They're basically split because of sample size. I mean, it's split. So here we are. All right. Let's move on. In English, of course, they are actually lower. That's surprising to me, but it was surprising to me what we found, but it's not surprising what the implications are for the rest of that poll. So when you look at like the Twin Cities core, there are people who identify with English national origin in and around the Twin Cities core. Trump doing better there. It wouldn't hurt to have that group vote a little less if you want. If you're a Republican and you want to win the state, they did come to Clinton's rescue in 2016. All right. Trump didn't do enough in the Twin City burbs that he needed to do. All right. So here we go. Moving forward, let's look at approval with Biden, and we'll look at the nomination stuff. Americans, about 38% approve, about 57% disapprove. It's huge. It's a big, big, big spread. And when you look at the Danes, they're about even. All right. English, they're a little bit more approved than disapproved, but it is close. And again, that doesn't surprise me at all. Germans are also kind of close in Minnesota, but they are more disapproving of Joe Biden than approving. That's why, again, that somewhat disapprove is such a big deal. You may have a German ethnic group that is not religious, they're not heavily like a devout Catholic. So when it comes to, something like that being on a ballot or something, to the previous question, and he talks about, some of these social issues, you got to make those people comfortable that you're not going to slap them with some draconian thing. All right. Irish, it's a smaller subsample here, so maybe don't take too much out of that. All right. And then, of course, you have the Swedish, which are a little bit less happy with Joe Biden. But again, there's that group of, they're not heavily disapproving of him. They're somewhat, and they still will vote for him if they feel like the alternative is not a good alternative. And that's what happened, by the way, in 22. Republicans fell shy of that everywhere. They were just like, you know what? Yeah, I disapprove of Biden, but look at the exit polls, guys. Democrats won somewhat disapprove. They won that group overall for the House vote, and it hurt them in the Senate races as well. All right, let's look at the Republican primary. Among those who have American ethnicity, Trump is at 60, DeSantis is at 10, Haley at 9, Vivek at 6. English, Trump is at 67. It's weird. It's like it's a liberal group, but those who are Republican are Trumpy and America firsters. It's kind of crazy. Small sample with Dutch and Danish here, but Trump leads with both. DeSantis said some Dutch, support. That actually doesn't surprise me. It doesn't. And, of the three people we spoke to who were Danish in the Republican nomination, all three picked Trump. It's small, but take it for what it's worth. A majority of Germans, and on and on and on. All right. Swedish a little bit less, but Norwegians certainly more pro-Trumpy. With Joe Biden, Biden consolidates the Swedish primary voter pretty solidly. Does better with polls as well. Small samples. Moving on, some of the bigger ones. Germans, 61%, 64% of English. I mean, it does matter when you speak to 50 people and 31 tell you they're going to vote for Joe Biden. Even though it's a small sample size, it's still 50 people. 64% among those were English. That was 60 people, and 153 who identified as American nativists, 63%. Dean Phillips has some support here. This is his own home state. Who is he getting it from? He's getting it from some unlikely, kind of strange groups. He gets some from Norwegians, but that's really not it. He gets it from Germans and Irish who feel they're disaffected, and nativists. All right. And I bet Dean would love to hear that. You're getting it from nativists, Dean. Racist. That was not a smoke break, Laura. That was a body armor break. It was, swear. Moving on to Trump versus Biden. You can actually see here Trump has a 5-point lead with those who are Americans. All right, but really what jumped out at me, it's very possible those English come home. Biden goes over with the 9.5% that's undecided. But Trump has a little bit of a lead. He's got a 4-point lead right now. It's 5 interviews. But it's nevertheless a 4-point lead. This is... he needs that. If he's not the lead, but he needs to be where he is with that group, because he's going to have to end up being around the mid-40s. Why? Because he just cannot get blown out in Washington and Dakota. He needs to make those races out there in the burbs of the Twin Cities. Those counties that surround the Twin Cities, he's got to make that a race. All right. And then Biden's actually doing better with Germans in Minnesota. And that's a little bit surprising, but, it is what it is. It's 117 people. Outwardly dismiss it. It's something. Swedish, you got to keep an eye on. You're going to lose the Swedes, but you just can't lose them that bad. And then you have to win the Norwegian, which Trump is about at 50 with Norwegians already. That's why he's running as strong as he is. All right. That, and again, him doing better with English and obviously winning the Americans, but you can't lose the Scandinavian vote in Minnesota, which tends to be more liberal, by that much. You cannot get clobbered out there. And that's what happens. You can see Danish even, Trump's getting drummed. This is why, he wins Ohio, he wins Iowa. Everyone knows that's going to happen. So you don't ignore people, and you always want to visit people to say hello. But you don't have to focus so much of your time, effort, and resources on states you're going to win by friggin' 8, 10 points, 12 points, 14 points. And you go and you put Democrats on the defensive. And I'm telling you, looking at ethnicity and looking at region, there are 3 places in Minnesota that I would just keep hammering. Like a triangle pattern. Just bang, 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 bang. And you could do it. Absolutely could do it. By the way, well, it's not that close in Minnesota. 24 hours later, the Minnesota Post released a poll that shows it's a statistical dead heat in their poll. Do you know what the Minnesota Post had in 2020 and 2016? The only reason, actually, that they have Biden slightly ahead and we have really a tie with Trump up slightly a little bit, it's a tie. The only reason why is because they have a very Democratic electorate, or a much more Democratic electorate than I think is even reasonable. In 2020, Minnesota was like D+1. That's it. All right, so you can see generally what's going on here. It's 137. I want to make sure we get to a lot of these questions, but Trump's going to have to do better with some of these Germans. They are less Catholic in Minnesota, so that's an issue. They're also more educated. That's also an issue. You can see here, by the way, that when you add Kennedy to the mix, Biden takes the lead with the English vote. That's why Biden takes the lead overall. That's the major change. Trump still holds the American nativist ethnicity, but English, which he is doing so much better when he's just head to head against Joe Biden. Unfortunately for him, a chunk of his vote is, a sizable chunk of his vote goes to Robert Kennedy. And some people who said that they were undecided or would not vote go to Biden because they are, I'm telling you, they're thinking, well, with the third party, I could throw away the state. So I better vote for Biden. All right. And you can actually see here that he gets roughly the same amount, whereas Trump falls considerably, 9 points among this constituency. And where do they go? Well, where do you think they went? There's 18 people who make up the 15%. That's another third party. Okay. There are only 14 here now. So 4 of them went where? To Robert Kennedy. But the rest are Trump voters. They picked Trump before. And then when Robert Kennedy was added to the mix, they picked Robert Kennedy. That is not good. Now, the good news for Trump is that Minnesota's ballot access is fairly damn easy compared to the other states. Of course, Democrats are going to fight it tooth and nail. But with Jill Stein and Cornel West on the ballot, you can see what happens with the English vote here. Actually, Trump's goes up about 3. Some people go back away from Robert Kennedy, probably because they think, well, the stakes are higher. I'll go back to Trump. And some of them literally do. Biden, he falls a little, he rose. See, I guess actually with English, he rose. But Trump got back some of his vote. Trump still holds the American nativist, vote. German gets closer, which is bad for Biden. 13% go to, how many of the German? Yep. There was several more. Among Germans, Kennedy got about 11%. Then he gets about 13 in this other matchup. Jill Stein takes some as well. And then Cornel West takes some. So he's pulling away from Biden support among Germans. And then as you can see here, Norwegians, by the way, we went right past that. Norwegian actually ticks up a little bit for Trump in the 5-way. And then Trump retakes a small lead. All right. But this is all very, very much within the sampling era and very, very close. Okay. All right. Let's go back with 140. Let's go back to the queue here. If Trump is back in the White House in 2025, do you think his new AG should appoint a special prosecutor to investigate the lies and criminal ban on hydroxychloroquine, the media included? Rick, I, more than many, loathe the media. I think they are probably one of the most negative forces that we have in society. They most certainly push disinformation more than any other entity in this country. I'm talking about corporate big media, so-called mainstream, which isn't. It is leftist, state-run media. And by the way, I would throw Fox News into state-run media category too. That said, I don't know. I don't like the idea of government persecuting media at all. I don't. We have a First Amendment and we just need to expose them for what they are. What I think we should do is all stop pretending. Earlier Americans didn't do this. It was only until like the 1950s, again, Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver, where people believed the government after World War II. They believed everything the government said. Government would never lie to us like this. Then we started to think that media was kind of like in the same category. These people in position of power, they're not bad. They're not inherently bad. Early Americans did not believe that. All right. Prior to the greatest generation, no offense to them. My grandfather, I loved him to death. I admired what they did. But they let us down like this, like the primrose path, where, they put so much trust and faith into these institutions that Americans never had before. No, I'm talking about the greatest generation. Not. We'll get there. Then they gave birth, though, Laura, to a generation who just wanted to sit around and smoke pot, among other things. Not the whole entire generation, but I mean, listen, the circus is in the Congress right now. That's why we're in the position we're in. It's also in academia and everywhere else. They played the long game. It worked. But I do think that he needs an AG to investigate some of the private companies that these people worked with. Guys, pharmaceutical companies are friggin' evil. I don't know why anybody would look at them as some like heroes, the lifesavers, the vax development teams. They're just heroes. No, they're not. They're greedy pieces of garbage. All they care about is money. They don't care about who they poison and who they don't. Look what Purdue Pharma did to the entire country. I was a victim of a liar in a lab coat. My wife will tell you. Oh, those aren't addictive. And yeah, I mean, they are, but if there's a problem, you can easily get off of them. And the worst part about it is, Laura, one thing that it took me a while to even forgive myself with is I knew that was BS. I didn't even believe her. I didn't. And it's one thing I had to struggle with myself for a long time, but she was paid and incentivized to say that. And yet somehow we think these people in these lab coats are honest people of integrity. Laura and I were just looking at a documentary about the Dr. Paolo Macalini. And he was supposed to be this Italian and world-renowned surgeon in prosthetics and what do they call it? Regenerative thoracic surgery. Meanwhile, he was simply putting plastic. He said there was stem cells all over it and it would regrow and be a fake organ that regrows in the body. He was guinea pig testing people. He didn't even do trials on. And Karolinski, the most powerful hospital in the world, it's like a state within a state. They supported him. They knew he committed research fraud, fudged data, killed people. They knew it. And they didn't give a damn. The New York Times runs a hippies, and they deny it. They do an internal investigation, which is a sham. Meanwhile, he's still killing people. And they do an investigation that's a sham. And the New York Times is like, well, okay, Karolinskaya, they exonerated him. So I guess our report was wrong. And the good guys were ruined. Karolinskaya declared war on those poor SOBs for doing the right thing, for reporting Paolo, for killing people. One of those girls didn't even have a life-threatening illness. She just had a very uncomfortable illness that gave her a lot of phlegm, and it was uncomfortable, and she thought it was nasty. And he was like, well, I'll replace your windpipe, and I'll give you a fake prosthetic. I'll give you a prosthetic that will grow with stem cells and replace your defective windpipe. You watch some of these people get prepped for surgery. Watch B-roll of these people getting prepped for surgery. Now that we all know that he knew he was going to kill those people. So I really think there needs to be, Rick, some kind of reckoning. The lies over COVID. Vaccine injuries. Oops, sorry, YouTube. There has got to be some reckoning. Millions and millions and millions of people believed them. They did it to win an election. They did it to get rich. I think in the not so distant future, we're probably going to find out that our own ruling class had a hand in what could only be in the unleashing of a pathogen that was deadly to a certain group of people in the population that also happened to be a certain group of people that voted for their political opposition. Again, I just don't believe in coincidences in politics. People are dangerous when they want power and money. They're dangerous. And nobody's ever punished. Nobody is ever punished. Another thing, by the way, I've been looking at, Rick, and I had been asked to do this, and now I'm kind of like, I told Laura, it sent me on my own personal mission. I haven't talked to you guys about this yet, but the justice system in this country is completely broken. If we all concede that we know the justice system isn't perfect, then how do we not take ridiculous conviction rates as evidence that not only is the system not perfect, it's unjust. If a system was striving to be perfect and just, or because you're never going to get to perfect, but at least striving toward justice, we would see roughly a more balanced conviction rate. Why? Because cops lie, because prosecutors are corrupt, because judges don't stop them, because we're human beings and we all make mistakes. For somebody who gets pegged as right wing a lot, I think you guys would be surprised how much I support things like the Innocent Project, which pisses me off. Watch the black man get convicted. Because why? Because he defended his home. When the police came in like stormtroopers, unannounced, he had every right to defend himself and his family. Guilty of murder. That just happened earlier this week. When the only high-profile case of an acquittal I'm able to find I'm talking about as a statistician, in one of the largest federal districts in the country, and of course I'm talking about Vince McMahon, is an extremely wealthy man who was able to put up an incredible defense because he had the money to do it, with lawyers who were plugged in all the right places, had all the right connections, knew how to drive it home, knew exactly what to do to that jury. Even other people like him convicted. The vast majority, overwhelmingly, don't even try to go to trial. I don't know. I mean, I think we need a special prosecutor, Rick, to make people pay in this country who deserve to pay. And we need to find out who these bad actors are that are causing 99% conviction rates. And this entire justice system needs to be overhauled. I'm starting to look at other countries now to try to get some sense of. From what I can tell, we have one of the most unjust systems in the civilized Western world. It's awful. If we know the system has issues, is flawed, I don't know how anyone, I don't think you have to be some mathematical genius to realize logically. So make a logical argument. Forget about, digging deep into the math. If something is flawed, there's no way it could be 99% plus efficient. I mean, am I explaining that correctly? You know what I mean? We need a special prosecutor to look into that. We need somebody to overhaul the whole system. And we need someone to make people pay when there is something so horribly unjust done to the population. Rick, think about the Russia collusion hoax. They convinced the country, a large part of the country, of a lie, a dangerous lie. Then they dog whistled to one of their fanatic supporters to go assassinate Steve Scalise. I mean, he's dead. He can't pay. But Rachel Maddow is walking free. And by the way, there were 4 people who tried to defend him. Where are they now? They were trying to protect him and do their job. That's not just. Question. Santos won New York 3 by 8 points in 2022. How big is the risk it goes to a Democrat in an inevitable special election? Very big. Very big. The good news for Republicans is that they're non-establishment MAGA people who are doing a lot of hard work in areas of New York like that. And they're winning a non-white coalition that nobody's, thought they would win. But this is the kind of thing when they elected George Santos. For those who don't know what we're talking about, George Santos was voted, 100 plus Republicans voted to expel him with Democrats from the U.S. House of Representatives, a duly elected member of the United States Congress, who, yes, has been accused and has ongoing allegations against him, but also there was allegations that he fabricated parts of his resume or embellished parts of his resume. Again, that's for the voters to decide whether or not they want to punish him for that. Richard Blumenthal ran around for years telling people he was in Vietnam. Senator Richard Blumenthal. He's still a U.S. Senator to this day. Bob Menendez, if the voters of New Jersey, Democratic primary voters, want to remove Bob Menendez, fine. He's been indicted. What we are seeing right now, and what Republicans what just happened? Okay. There's going to be people who are going to say this is BS. They're going to be mad, Jerry, because they're going to say you overrode my vote. How dare you? I'm not supporting you pieces of garbage anymore. And they're not. Democrats will turn out because they're Democrats. But George Santos was not convicted of anything. Do you know in the past who has been expelled from the United States Congress? Do you know the horrible, horrible precedent that these stupid idiots just set? John B. Clark, Missouri, 1861. Michael Myers, Pennsylvania, 1980. John W. Reed from Missouri, 1861. Him and Clark, similar things. Watch, you're going to find out. Henry Burnett, Kentucky, 1861. All 3 years, do they sound important to you for those? For John B. Clark, John W. Reed, and Henry Burnett, they were all expelled in 1861. 2 from Missouri, 1 from Kentucky. Think about the year, and we'll come back. Corruption charges. I know. I keep getting cut. I see it. It must be a connection. George Santos hasn't been convicted of a damn thing. All the FBI has to do now is indict somebody, and they can change the balance of power in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. Congress. And the cowardly, corrupt Republicans once again sided with the deep state, the administrative state, over their own damn voters. Why haven't Democrats expelled Bob Menendez yet? Because they're not stupid. Because the balance of power is at play, is at stake. And I got news for you. I don't give a damn who they indict. I would never vote to expel a member who is elected by his constituency. If he or she goes down next time, that's on them. But the voter is sovereign in this country. The voter. And that's why you can't earn them. Republicans, this is why you keep getting your asses kicked. This is why they don't come out for you. Only a man named Donald Trump. Because you don't deserve their vote. You're not good enough. You're not worthy of it. How dangerous of a precedent they just set. Crooked, corrupt little cowards. Stupid, cowardly, and corrupt. That's what makes up a modern Republican. You could bake one in the oven. They're so freaking stupid. They deserve to lose the House, Laura. Like, can I just say this out loud? Republicans, and I'll poll it always, folks. I will always poll objectively and do my very best. But I personally don't believe the Republicans deserve to keep either house of Congress. Not that I would like the outcome of Democrats running amok, but Democrats at least earn the support of their voters. Republicans don't deserve the support of the American public. They didn't do a damn thing to earn it, Laura. They just expelled George Santos So now maybe you get some idea why they haven't defunded Jack Smith. They haven't fought to defend Donald Trump against what is the most totalitarian assault on self-governance this country has ever seen. Ever. Ever. There has never been a bigger risk to self-governance in the United States of America than right now. Never. Maybe because they don't believe in it. Maybe because they're a bunch of frauds who kiss Donald Trump's butt when he's in the same room and they need to be reelected, but in truth, do not hold the voter sovereign. Don't care about these things we care about called, I don't know, the presumption of innocence, a bedrock principle of this justice system, which, by the way, like I just got done talking about, is completely unjust. No wonder why they're not doing anything about it. They don't believe in it anymore. They don't deserve your vote. That's what happens when you vote for somebody with an R at the name because you're a Republican and you just care about the letter after the name. People of California 13 deserve what they're getting right now. Sorry. And I can go down the list. Look at 100 and what was it? I want to say it's like 109. I'm not kidding. Something like that. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And by the way, Mississippi 3 deserves what they're getting too, because they let big money come in, smear Mike Cassidy. Otherwise, you would not have Michael Guest right now. Cassidy forced Guest into a runoff. So while they're voting to expel George Santos, they let Bowman from New York scot-free for pulling the fire alarm because he didn't like the vote. Who did that? Right, Mike Guest, the chairman of that committee. That's who let him off. So they persecute, betray their own voters and their own party while they protect the enemy of the voter. And they think they deserve to have the power of the House of Representatives or the United States Senate? I don't think so. It's a complete opposite. The hell with them. I say let them get wiped out. I'm extremely angry at my congressman to the point where I almost decided of subjecting my family to horrible attacks that would be leveled against me if I did it because of, my own story. But I personally thought, I think I can beat him. That's how I was this close. That's how angry I was. Laura said, do it. We don't care.
I know you could beat them, baby. And I
said, do it. We're strong. We'll make it through. I know, but I'm just saying, there's got to be somebody else. How come it's so hard to find somebody who's got stones, keeps their promise? Like, what has become of us? We're a terribly sick, spiritually and mentally sick country. It's just terrible. It's just terrible. Yeah, Jerry, if they lose it, they deserve it. They deserve to lose it. All right. My question for today. Do you think the smug, confident arrogance from DeSantis influencers about how 100% sure they are DeSantis will win Iowa is simply an act because they're being paid to do so or because the fix is in and they know it? I think they are going to try to fix the Iowa caucuses. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to say I've seen it happen before on the right and left. I've actually watched that happen. But the problem is this time Trump has more organization. So there's issues with that, including, by the way, the support of the attorney general. So it may not be wise to try to do that. I just think a large part of that, and it's a great question as always. You always have great questions. A large part of that is they're amateurs. They're amateurs. They don't really know what they're talking about, unfortunately. To really claim that there's going to be a 35-point miss, that it's not significant at all historically. That not only is Trump up in Iowa, but he's up in New Hampshire and South Carolina. He's up nationally. The poll came out yesterday, 68%. I mean, that may be the biggest lead he's got in national poll yet. Everyone's at this point just showing him taking off nationally. I think a lot of them are honestly stupid, but then you have others like Steve Deese who have been around for a while. He did this during the Cruz thing too. Bob Vanderplatz, he lied all throughout 2016 as well. I mean, and Cruz is going to take off in Iowa so much that the voters in New Hampshire are rallying to him, and Trump's going to lose the New Hampshire primary too. They don't really I don't think they really believe that. I think they're just liars. California, one of the Dilly meme teams, they just buried DeSantis. They're pro-Trump people, but they're very, very, very talented in what they do. They just put out a Jingle Bells meme about it. There's also a comparison showing you how they talked during 16 with Ted Cruz and how Ted Cruz himself talked. And it's exactly the same thing. So you have to ask yourself, do they know they're liars? I don't know how when it comes to those people, I don't know how you don't conclude they do. No, they're liars. They're lying on purpose. But a lot of these other people who are new, they're playing whack-a-fraud every day, every week. There's a new fraud burner account. These are idiots. They really don't know what they're talking about. You got to be careful on Twitter or X or whatever, and on social media in general of these like described pundits and experts and whatnot. I did not give myself the name People's Pundit. These people just come out like they think they're experts and they know nothing. They have never been on the scene. They don't even know how this stuff works. They certainly know nothing about polling. So I try to give a lot of people some leeway because they're new and stupid. As a pollster, how much of predicting an electorate is a gut check in who it is that is going to and isn't going to come out and vote? I always say this, and this is from YouTube NL member. Part of polling is obvious how a group's going to vote, but especially once you get to the election time, the real trick is the second part of your job, which is determining who is going to come out and vote. And so far, we've been really, really fortunate with that and really accurate with that. 22 was a little bit of a gut check because even in our final national generic ballot, for instance, I mean, it was damn near spot on. But the 1 something point difference in the spread came solely from us favoring a higher turnout model. And higher turnout meaning there would be more non-college working class voters that were going to vote. They said they were going to vote, and they didn't, right? So that was the entire difference between 4.5 points and 3 points, or roughly 3 points or 4, whatever it was. If you look at the poll we did just before that, that was actually it was a tighter screen. And what did we have? I think 2.7, which was damn near on. The vote preference didn't change between those two polls. Not a lot. The only difference was in the projecting of who was going to come out and vote. Oz in Pennsylvania, he had all of the hallmarks of a winning come from behind campaign. He just did not get those voters out and he lost. He had all the ingredients to be able to win, but he did not motivate those voters. He didn't mobilize them. So that, in a lot of instances, it's who the pollster thinks is going to come out that makes them miss. In 2016, what made us right and many others wrong, we believed a lot of those very same people, and we did not screen them out. A lot of people would have screened them out because they didn't have vote history or recent or strong enough vote history. We did not screen them out. If they reported that they were certain to vote or had already voted, then they were in our vote screen. That's a great question, though. Really, I could talk all day about that. Can you touch on Virginia? Even with the full adult sample, Trump is polling within 4, maybe even ahead with registered voters. I'm telling you, you got to be careful with that. Trump is doing, if you look at our polling in the Rust Belt, same thing. Nationally, same thing. Trump is doing better with the overall population than he is with the voting electorate. So unlikely voters and adults who aren't even registered to vote Trump's lead with them is much, much bigger. That's why we have such low margins in our poll this time. We didn't really hit if you go to the likely voter screen, you'll see everyone's margin goes up. And we got Trump like 44, Biden 41, like others do. But it tends to help Biden. I will say this. They didn't poll with the full ballot. That would have been interesting. Last year in VA, excuse me. And by the way, I found my old, it was so cool. I found my old, when the journalist was asking about polls from 2016. I found my old map, man. It still worked. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. But yeah, in Virginia, there was a libertarian. There was nobody else. So it's going to be hard for like Kennedy to get on the ballot, for Stein to get on the ballot. We'll see. But if they do, if others do get on the ballot, then Virginia could get a little screwy for Biden. What jumped out at me with that poll, Connor, is just how much it shifted, period. All right. So I think they had Biden up by 10, 52, 42, and that was pretty much spot on. And just a month or so ago, they still had Biden up by quite a bit. And now it's very close. It's like 48, 44. That is the way it looked when Hillary Clinton lost. All right. So, Dan, no question with this tip, just a comment. Oh, come on, Dan. I got a question for you. I was reading part of it. It's not a question. As someone who has worked for more than a few candidates way down in the polls, Pat Buchanan in 2000, Jeff Deal for Massachusetts governor last year, I get why DeSantis influencers don't want to give up. What I can identify with is why they insist on smearing the polls rather than going out and doing some work. In 2000, I literally walked 10 miles handing out Buchanan literature. I didn't realize all I had to do was, where's the rest of it? Oh, yeah, I don't know what happened to the rest of that comment from Dan, but I will say this, Dan, they're immature. And I think they just, again, a lot of these people are just newbies. And I don't think they understand. I'm listening to one guy, and the sad thing is he's claiming to be a data analyst, and he's making claims like, it doesn't matter if a poll is wrong by 5 points or 50 points. The data is dirty. What the hell are you talking about? It's not a clean data set. What the are you talking about? You do realize clean isn't an actual term, all right? And you do realize what sampling errors are, right? Of course it matters. I mean, the stupidest stuff, Dan, I just don't think they know. I don't know. I don't know. But they're burning bridges, and they're going to be done soon. Why is New Jersey slow? Why is New Jersey so slow on the uptick? They still like Joe Biden. Jersey's a blue state. You know, it's funny because nobody's really working in New Jersey the way that like you have new MAGA people like Gavin Wax and Alyssa. Oh my God, so sorry. I am so sorry. I did not mean to do that to you. Elise Stefanik. She's MAGA, man, and their efforts are working out. You know, there's something. They're not alone. I don't want to leave anybody else out. But therapy. I mean, I get like contacted a lot. You know, this is what we're doing, and now anyway. And there's nobody in New Jersey doing that. And I think if they would, there would be more of a swing in New Jersey. But you know, right there's just not. You know, so it's a good question though. And remember, New Jersey was only one of 2 states that voted at a larger margin for Barack Obama in 12 than they did in 08. Barack Obama slipped everywhere in the other 48, except for in New Jersey and Hawaii. Hearing rumors Democrats are giving up on Georgia for 24. Yes. That is a true rumor. And they will focus on Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, PA, and Michigan. Yes. They're on defense already. That's what I'm saying. So I would not ignore Georgia, though. I wouldn't. I would keep going. But I would not beat it down at store like always. And I would say this. They're on the defense already. So expand the damn field. Minnesota is close. He could win it. I'm telling you, he could win it. He ignored it last time, and that's tragedy. 1 visit in 16, and it almost went. 1 visit. Have the historically Democratic pollsters changed their methodologies from 2020? Is this the reason why most polls are showing a Trump lead over Biden, or the lead showing with the built-in flawed methodologies? That's a great poll. The answer is both. Quinnipiac has changed his methodology. All right. And that's a great question. I don't see any change from the New York Times or Fox News. NBC is going to be a tough poll. Think about this. It's going to be a tough poll for Trump. I think they're going to wind up having Biden leading, and probably will until the very end. All right. They had Trump up with 18 to 34-year-olds, 48 to 44 or something. If Trump is leading among young people and yet only has a 2-point lead nationally, how tough is that poll going to be? Right. If those young people swing back, again, NBC still had Trump up. I mean, still had Trump down when even major news outlets like ABC, the Washington Post, Fox News, many others had Trump ahead. The Wall Street Journal, which hates him. So NBC is also a poll that's conducted jointly by Ron DeSantis' pollster, Public Opinion Strategies, and Hart Research, Hillary Clinton's pollsters. If you guys have been with me for a while, I'm not going to do it again, but I can tell you all about Hart Research, what they had done to Laura and I caught, once in real time to show people. Very, very, very badly conducted poll. Live caller. Is there a chance a cattle rancher is willing to sponsor PPD? I heard Rich research on the government purging ranchers on Frank's show. You mean sponsor the poll? You mean? Because the polls are publicly funded, of course. But if there's something else I'm missing with that, Duke, let me know. But and you can do that by, sending Laura a thing real quick. If there's something else you're thinking. But yeah, if you anybody wants to help with the poll, the links are in the description. You could pick the national one still, or you can pick Georgia. That's the two that's up right now. The national one was supposed to be, once it was done and funded, it was supposed to be for the Rust Belt poll. But I know we got I was going to talk to Cahaly about this too. Maybe we'll do that Monday, but neither one of us have done a national poll in a while. And the Christmas poll would piggyback off a national poll. So maybe I should set another form for the Christmas poll. But yeah, I mean, we'll take all the help we can get, Duke, on that. We need those projects funded, share them far and wide too, because the more we share them, the better the contributor base. And the less, burden it's for the same people who contribute all the time. Can we explain the thought process behind rhinos like Representative Bacon? He's bought out totally. I don't even need to read the rest of the question. He represents a district that's filled with banking and finance. He's also completely owned by the military industrial complex. Bacon is trash. I'm sorry. Returned absentee AV ballots with pre-printed postage do not get postmarked. How do we confirm timeliness? I don't understand. Are you talking about business reply mail? I don't understand that. I really don't. And violence and poetry, you're not going to be able to stop the fortification. I'm telling people this. You're not going to be able to stop cheating. People cheat all the time. The only thing you can do is beat it. And you can beat it with unparalleled participation, because then you're shrinking the amount of votes that they can fortify. All right. You've got turnout. Mobilization can beat the cheat. It can. It's mathematically certain. It's just people have this bad, I don't know where they got it from. Maybe some of these people who stepped forward after 2020 claiming to be election experts with the next, like line graph or something proving fraud. They cannot just continuously add ballots to as many as they need. That's not how this works. They can't do that. There are a finite amount of records, and your job is to make the pool of those you can exploit so small it's not possible. And how can you do that? High turnout. And I'm talking about ridiculously high turnout. Yeah, I mean, I keep an eye on. I think everyone got a chance, and I'm just looking at the question about Democrats swapping Biden out. There are people who are digging through DNC's obscure rules to see if there's a way that they can remove Biden if need be. However, I think everybody last night now understands what I'm talking about when I said that Newsom just doesn't poll well in the Rust Belt or the Sun Belt. He is a one-trick pony. Now, he could get better, and he's slimy, and he's good, but as of now, the Sun Belt and Rust Belt voters, they see him. So I don't want to say that one out loud because she's strong. That's a strong candidate. All right. I'm talking about a Democrat. She's a very strong choice. But if you leapfrog a colored vice president, a non-white vice president, if you leapfrog her, Democrats are going to flip the hell out. Non-white Democratic voters of color are just going to wig. So they're in a bind. Do you think Trump exposed all the problems with Christian leaders on a large scale, or do you think this would have been inevitable without Trump's candidacy? I think the grift would have continued a little bit longer, but they were on their way to implosion anyway. Just constant failures and the exodus of membership. So I think Trump's accelerated it. That's a good question. Adam Laxalt resigned from the DeSantis campaign. A lot of people are leaving left and right. Adam Laxalt should be more concerned about those very same people committing fraud on his campaign. He lost because when Joe Lombardo's door knockers were out walking on hot days, like Dan was talking about, walking 10 miles a day, convincing voters to get out and vote for Joe Lombardo, his were rolling the dice over at Caesars and committing fraud. And that's it. So he should have been more concerned about that. Looks like I got to run here because it is getting Paolo Macchiarini. Thank you. Macchiarini. Right. That was it. Yep. Adam Laxalt's out. Yep. There it is. Main super PAC supporting Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign has been rocked by another significant departure. Adam Laxalt, a friend and former roommate of the Florida governor, has stepped down as the chairman. Yeah, they're all running. The rats are running from the ship. Can Trump keep calling MSM fake news 110% instead? Maybe an XO declaring them fake. I mean, Fox is fake, For justice. That's a funny comment. I think Fox News got a serious problem. And this question from Getter. I don't think he's got to do anything more to Fox News than what he's doing. I think Fox News is going to be done real soon once the last of their actual audience kicks the bucket. I'm sorry. Look at their demo ratings in key demos. They're awful. I mean, they can claim most viewers, but nobody's really watching them. Nobody watched that debate last night. I hate to tell you. The only thing they're going to see are Gavin Newsom's clips about abortion. Stackhouse laws make it illegal for physicians to profit from prescriptions. Pharmacy benefit managers have circumvented this relationship. Well, that's it has gotten better since the days of like Purdue Pharma, but they can't directly profit on it, but they still get incentives, and that's sadly still the case. I just saw somebody the other day, although it's probably better, I guess. It's improvement. But, with a little note from the rep who was saying it's a drug that treats alcoholism. And a little note from the rep talking about, how much their goal was for that month, putting people on that drug. And very clearly, she's going to get a kickback for that. But it's not, you can't give money like you used to, cruises, stuff like that. But go to a convention and go check it out. They can't directly profit from it, but they still unfortunately do. Maybe they get a grant or research they weren't going to get considered with or something. What happened with Apple News? I see it. Republican Party will always be the party of stupid. Yep, that's right. I know we're at the end of the rope here. There is no recall do the voters have recourse if they didn't like Santos, like a voter recall? I'm not sure if they did in that situation. That's a really good in New York. I don't know about New York. All right. Some states like Kentucky and others have some real bad laws where you can't. That's a good question. I don't know about New York. Maybe we'll have Gavin Wax on to talk about that. That's a good question. Yeah. Brad Parscale. Yeah, he went. So they lost him. That's right. Hey, people, nobody is coming to save us. We better get people to the polls. I'm gonna end on that. Amen, Clark. Amen. I'm gonna end on that. Don't forget to go check out those ethnicity things. We didn't get a chance to really go through Minnesota as much as the others, but I think we all see what we're talking about. Next week we'll combine them all, and locals you'll have it before then, but we'll combine them all and we'll check them in larger sample sizes, and then we'll nest them separately so you can at least see which ones originally belong to that state. But we're gonna look at it, and then we'll talk if we have to, which I'd love to. We'll talk about what we could do with that data, right? So I know there was a lot of questions we got about multi-level regression analysis, post-stratification. This would be the time to go over it. I mean, we're talking about 7,000 interviews almost. Huge, huge. Again, public polling project, share it far and wide, contribute to it, and, we'd appreciate it. What else? What else? What am I missing here?
We may not have
Gorka. I'll be on Gorka on Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sorry, Laura. Go ahead. What were you saying?
I'm saying we may not have book club because Sabrina's marching in a parade on Sunday.
Oh, no. That's 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, well, other people weren't there. There was like 5 people missing yesterday. I mean, not
Last week.
yesterday,
Yeah,
last
everybody
week.
knows what you mean.
Thank you. I'm sorry, guys.
Man, that's true. And last month, I remember last year, we couldn't get back in time for book club when the parade. Yeah, our daughter dances in a parade at one of the town's parades. She's been doing a lot, actually, which is really cool. I love it. I enjoy it. I really love it. I went to my
love it
son's
more.
Christmas concert, man. It was awesome last night. It was so awesome. It was like a show.
It
I'm like,
was like a real show,
it's like
like
a
something you would
show.
pay for.
His conductor is amazing. I'm like, how the hell do you keep their attention span this long? I can't do that, But the work they've done with these kids is just incredible. I mean, I was stunned. I'm like, Carol of the Bells was like over the moon good. I'm like, it was like 7 minutes long. I don't even know. It was crazy. It was so good.
All I gotta
so
say
good.
is it was so good from the recordings you sent me.
Even on a
It
phone
must have
recording.
been amazing there.
Yeah, when you're live, I mean, you should have seen Mr. B, man. When he brings together like on Carol of the Bells, when you're there, Laura, and and he brings them together up there. That he's the conductor for people who don't know. I mean, he really brings it home, and you're like watching it, you're listening, and it's kind because he's working you up to it. It's coming, and just bang. I mean, it's just so good. It was so good.
It
I'm over
was.
there, and it's like like, oh my god, so proud of this kid. So good. And
It's amazing. Both of them are. All 3 of them.
it's not really a kid anymore, Laura. We got one more.
Don't
I'm
do
never
it
gonna
like
let the
that.
magic fade. Never gonna
Don't
let the
make me
magic
cry,
fade.
Richie. Don't make me
The
cry.
magic will never die in our house, Laura. No
Mm-mm.
way. I mean, if I gotta put swag on every door, I'll put swag on every door to look like a winter ass wonderland in here. I'm never gonna let the magic fade in this house. All right.
Rich is gonna be
And
going
Missile
crazy
Joe
because I'm
will
hanging snowflakes from all the ceiling.
always be welcome in our house. That's our elf on the shelf. Missile Joe. He's a family. He's family. Comes right after Thanksgiving. We read the book every Thanksgiving night, and then miraculously he appears the next day. If we read the book, can't forget. Never gonna let the magic fade, Laura. It didn't for us. Well, it did for me for a while. I mean, that's
That's you, buddy, not me.
Well,
I brought the magic
that's
back
what
to you,
addiction's all
baby.
about. You
I
lose the
brought
magic.
the magic back for you.
That's what you did. And if it wasn't for you, I would never have come back from the brink, honey. It's been
Well, now you're
it's
just
been
being
almost
cute.
20 years. You know that? I mean, it's over 15 years now. It's
I've
a long
known
time.
you. What?
No, I'm talking about
Oh, yeah.
sobriety. You know what I mean?
Well, amen to that.
Oh my God. Speaking of which, there he is right now. All right, let me rock out.
He's trying to get
Hold
us.
on, little buddy. I was just talking about you on the show, but hang on one second. Let me take the show out. All
He's
right,
getting
folks.
to you because he
See,
tried to.
Let me get out of here. Deuces. Thanks, everybody. Have a safe weekend. See you in a little bit. All right. Hold on, buddy.